Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our March 16th work session. First, I need a motion to go into our sixth special session.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the amendment to Community Development Block Grant Program Year 2019 Annual Action Plan for CDBG CV funding allocations.
Madam Mayor, hereby move for the Mayor and City Council amend the program year 2019 Community Development Block Grant Annual Action Plan in order to receive $274,356 of CDBG CV CARES Act funding, and further authorizing the mayor to execute all other documents relating to the city's CDBG CV funding. This funding will be allocated for CDBG eligible public service activities that help to prevent, prepare for, and respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. Details of the CDBG CV amendment and CDBG CV allocations are attached, and they are as follows. Public service, the Community Free Clinic Mental Health services to receive $50,000. Public service, Horizon Goodwill Whole Family Learning Program, $85,260. Public service, a Horizon Goodwill Food Resource through Downtown Restaurant Partnership, $36,648. Public service, the Washington County Commission on Aging Food Resources and Vaccine Coordination for seniors, $62,448. And the public service, YMCA of Hagerstown, Inc., Child Care Program for $40,000.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, approval of Invest Hagerstown City Center redevelopment grant application for 170 West Washington Street.
Madam Mayor, I hereby move for the Mayor and City Council to approve the attached Invest Hagerstown City Center redevelopment grant application for the renovation project at 170 West Washington Street. The total project cost is $1,100,000. The Invest Hagerstown redevelopment grant amount is $250,000. Staff are authorized to issue a letter of commitment in the amount of $250,000. No funds will be dispersed until staff has verified that all work in the development plan is completed to the city's satisfaction and the total project cost expenditure requirements have been met. Funding for this grant will come from the Invest Hagerstown line item in the fiscal year 2021 Economic Redevelopment Fund with a project completion deadline of March 1st, 2022.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving into our work session. First is a preliminary agenda review. Stop me if you have any questions. So next week, the 23rd, we'll have a 7 o'clock regular session, call to order, the invocation, pledge to the flag, do the announcements. Our meeting schedule for April will be April 6th, 13th, and 20th, all work sessions at 4 p.m., and April 27th, a regular session at 7 p.m. We have a list of appointments next week. A proclamation for Transgender Day of Visibility. We have citizen comments, which you can email up until 5 p.m. on Tuesday, March 23rd to councilcomments@hagerstownmd.org. Approval of the minutes. Then the consent agenda. We have Department of Community and Economic Development, open container law exemptions for Juneteenth and August-Toberfest, street closure requests for USMH Spirit Run and Thunder in the Square. For finance, we have financial consulting services, Davenport and Company LLC, with bond issue for $15,000 and other services, $150 to $200 per hour. Fire department, we have replacement of personal protective equipment, turnout gear for Whitmore Public Safety Group for $29,856. Parks and Engineering, 2022-2023 Payment Preservation Program, City Park ornamental fencing for $60,750, and the design build of a skate park and fairgrounds park for $555,000. Planning and Code Administration, abatement of weeds, brush, rubbish, debris at West North Avenue garages for Allegheny Wrecking and Salvage, $15,250. Police delinquent citation collections, February 21 through January 22 for $60,000. Speed camera charges, February 21 through January 22 for $403,200. Red light camera charges for January 21 through December 21, American Traffic Solutions for $165,000. Public Works, replacement of fire alarm system, additional fire alarm signals at City Hall for $15,283. Replacement of 3 gas-fired heaters at Market House for $10,200. And utilities, consulting services, GDS Associates for $50,000. And wastewater improvements to existing Pulitzer infrastructure for $100,000. Under unfinished business, we have approval of an ordinance, City of Hagerstown Police and Fire Retirement Plan, Amendment 13 to that plan, approval of an ordinance deed and easement agreement with Richard and Mary Manspeaker for future sidewalk construction. Under new business, we have introduction of an ordinance, quick claim for portion of 3rd Street right-of-way, introduction of an ordinance, acceptance of easement from Washington County for urban improvement project plan, approval of a license agreement with Maryland Theater for dumpster, approval of a resolution parking lease for University District parking deck with Maryland State Department of Education, Division of Rehabilitation Services, approval of a resolutions license agreement with House of Kobe, approval of a resolution amendment to Fairground software user agreement, approval of the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts Foundation graduation lamppost decorating project, approval of North ordinance exemption for the Barbara Ingram School for the Arts Do What Moves You Street Festival, approval of the fiscal year 22 Imagine Hagerstown budget, and approval of on-call plumbing services contract, May 1st, 21 through April 30th, 22. And city administrator comments, mayor council comments, and we'll adjourn. Any
Madam Mayor,
questions?
I'm sorry. You also have a copy of a consent agenda from Parks and Engineering for $43,642.30 for a 2022 Chevy Silverado pickup truck that will replace Unit 302. If you have any, Rodney's here, if you have any questions on that. It's on the Montgomery County contract, which is why there are no additional bidders on here, so just so you have awareness of this.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then, Madam Mayor, just yesterday, we got the deed of easement from the state for the urban improvement project at the Paper Alley along District Court. I think I mentioned that a few weeks ago when I gave my presentation on the UIP. So we'll have it on the agenda for next week, too, to introduce that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, up next we have the skate park design and build contract.
Just as a follow-up to our discussion in December, we issued a request for proposals, and the task force, and Phil is here, along with Will, Cindy, Ryan, several others, members of the task force are here. They reviewed the proposals. We received 5, and the task force unanimously is recommending a company called Spawn Ranch out of Los Angeles, California, to design and construct the skate park. Their proposal is, they're one of the foremost companies that build skate parks in the United States. They have tremendous experience. Their process that they use for public involvement is really good. They incorporate artistic features in the park. I think they'll be an excellent company. Our funding plan remains the same, and I have it outlined in the memo. I did want to give the skate park task force an opportunity to talk about some of the things they're doing fundraising-wise, because I think it's significant how they're engaging the community. So Phil and Will, if you guys would like to talk about that.
Sure. So Will actually has the most information, I feel like, right now with like ongoing efforts with our community.
All right, so the first event,
You want to come?
the first event, we brought in a decent amount of money. We got a $2,000 donation from Cushwa Brewery. We had, let's see, $7,695 from the art auction. And so far on the GoFundMe page that I have set up, we have $1,625. And then Cushwa Brewery also just did another small art auction and raised $430 in that one. I have 3 different t-shirt designs and stickers that I'm working on getting printed that we're going to sell off through the Instagram. Hub Labels has also reached out for their community outreach program. They're going to print some stickers and have them for sale at Cushwa and maybe some other locations, with all the proceeds going to the park as well. And then right now I'm working on a second art show. It's gonna be a little different than the first one. I don't know that I'm gonna try and plan an event around this art show like we did the first one. But the thought is to do the same thing as before, have local artists paint boards, and have them on display at 3 different restaurants in town, and let the art show and auction kind of run for about 2 weeks. Hopefully drive some people to go to the different restaurants and, stop in and eat, and also check out the boards and bid on the boards. So far there's a handful of artists that are working on it, and I just have a little bit more work to do getting the rest of the artists involved, but probably we'll have about 35 boards for that show as well. And then we applied to the Skatepark project, the Tony Hawk Foundation grant. Maybe we'll hear back from them next month. They announced the recipient for that grant. So we'll hear that.
The amounts vary for that grant. The
Yeah.
average amount awarded is around $10,000.
Yeah. And then I've also had a couple other companies reach out. Federal Stone and Thermont reached out and said they would be happy to, supply some heavily discounted materials for building the park, like the coping that goes around any bowls or the pump track or anything like that. Yeah.
And then we may have a donation of other materials to the park too, in the concrete cement realm. So it's too early to announce that completely yet, but it's good there.
Thank you.
It's a tremendous support, tremendous community support for this project.
Well done.
Any questions for us?
I just want to thank you all publicly, for all of this hard work that you put on behind the scenes to, study these different proposals and really taking the time to market this and the Instagram pages and all that you're doing really to create this skate park. So I really do appreciate all of the hard work that all of you do. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Will's
Rodney, you too.
definitely responsible for most marketing efforts. I would say any hard technical research, Ryan is definitely our kind of master skateboarder. And kind of beyond fundraising awareness, we're also going to be trying to just gain a physical presence of skaters to kind of help identify local people who are going to be using the park in the future. And Spawn Ranch, as do many skate park designer constructors, plan to engage the community in person and meet with them about what they're looking for in the park and try to get some input beyond just the design that we kind of have proposed. So you guys will also be seeing Instagram posts soon about some of the work that Ryan does with a pop-up skate park that's part of the local, it's a city park system, right? Yeah, part of the city parks, it's on the map for that. And hopefully we'll be getting an idea of who this community is and giving some faces to it. So we're excited about the kind of community having their turn to get really directly involved now too.
That's great.
Thank you.
So if all goes well, we'll be open by October.
Nice.
All right,
Awesome. Thank you for all your
Thank
hard
you.
work.
So exciting.
appreciate it.
See you out there.
Just so
Your
exciting.
skateboard.
I'm gonna learn how to skateboard.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I am not.
I should start now. I should probably start now.
Yeah, I'm bringing my camera.
What? You're gonna bring a camera from me?
We should start now.
Yeah, I'm gonna start tonight, probably.
All right, guys, we got the Municipal Stadium operating agreement.
With me is Travis again, and we're back to continue the discussion on the use of Municipal Stadium. We have a draft operating agreement for you to review, and if possible, we're hoping to get that approved this month. So just some of the highlights of the agreement with the Municipal Baseball Group, MBG, is it's a one-year proposal, basically be from April through October, where they would play baseball there. It sounds like most days. They would mow the field, maintain the skinned-in field. They'd have access to a lot of the buildings down there. They would pay us $3,000 a month in rent to cover the utility costs. They'll provide insurance to us. The city would pay the utility bills except for the video board if they choose to use that, and we put a cap in there on the water just to encourage conservation. We provide dumpster services and keep the field weed-free. They would follow the state COVID restrictions, which just got elevated last week to 50% capacity, up from 10%, so that's moving in a positive direction. And then the last thing I'd like to spend a little time, and then I'll turn it over to Travis if he has anything else, is the scheduling of the stadium. So they're gonna schedule it for their events, for all the baseball events. We're trying to figure out a way that we just wouldn't be turning this facility over to them completely, that we would wanna have the opportunity to have some events there as well, or community events there that are not baseball related. So the idea we came up with, and it's really just an idea, is that we would reserve 2 days a month, a Friday and a Saturday, for non-baseball events, where we would offer those to the community if they wanted to use the facility, because we've had a lot of people contact us about using the facility. That would be 14 total opportunities for the community to use it. One example of that is the Maryland Symphony, as I mentioned before, wants to be there on July 3rd and have their Salute to Independence on July 3rd. So my staff and I worked on, at the end of the packet memo, is a draft rental guidelines where we would rent out the stadium for events, and the fees that we're proposing are in there. They're very much aligned with other facilities of that nature, like the Ag Center and Frederick Fairgrounds. And that would be our proposal then, to rent those out. We will probably engage maybe a former Sun employee or somebody that knows the stadium well to help us manage this. Taking on 14 events, supporting 14 events isn't something we can do as staff. It just isn't. The stadium was always run by another entity, so it just can't absorb it. So we would bring on somebody like that part-time to help facilitate that, and they would be paid for out of the rental fee. And then I guess the question too would be about whether or not you would be okay if alcohol was served at those events, because then we need to put that into our rental form, what process is for that, what license they have to have, what security they have to have, all those kind of things. If we don't want to open that door, it'd be good to know that now. So that's kind of the proposal. Travis, did you have anything that you wanted to add before we?
I don't have anything to add, but I'm happy to answer questions if there are any.
I have a couple of questions. And I'm gonna obviously preface this by saying that I'm sure that while I had some of these questions last time, it's better having the ability to talk to staff and see the actual draft of what the agreement looks like now, to better formulate the questions that I might have. And obviously, I would assume the folks in the room, as well as the audience in general, knows that I have obviously some bias towards this property. I obviously have some interest, and we are working through an RFP process right now to convert the property into an indoor turf facility that I think we've talked about before. So,
And I'll have that in April for you all to look at.
while I appreciate, the temporary suggested use for it and the good that it has, I want to go from our discussion as a body that we had in this room back in January, where staff came in and said, hey, the facility's in this condition, we really don't have the ability to sort of make it something else and sort of take on that burden, and I think you expressed that in the user agreement. And we all sort of sat here and said, if individuals and entities and groups within our community want to use it and pay the freight, so to speak, to use it, that we could make that available. I feel like we've now diverted from that approach to basically we're handing the facility over to a third-party organization that will operate its use and consume its use for private purposes, frankly for organizations that, and I think that your proposal to us identified 40 teams from Chambersburg to the Eastern Panhandle, Smithsburg, Frederick County. And that, so to me, when I read that, it seems to read much differently than the conversation we had about offering it up for the community. to use back in January. And I get the notion that we don't have the staff to sort of manage that, but it clearly takes a much different context when we say, hey, you know, I mean, we know that there's a cost to do this. And we're gonna need whoever does that to cover the cost of being able to offer it for those purposes. And when I look at the memo back in February, you know, staff estimated at minimum, I think you used the word at least 4,000 per month for a 7-month season. And they're willing to offer 3,000 a month. So I think that we need to be clear that, you know, by the end of this process, it's likely we're going to be upside down on that equation. In other words, we're going to subsidize some degree of use of this proposed user, that we're going to hand off the entirety of you know, the accessibility and responsibility that use too, save for, you know, those couple of dates. And so when you get to those couple of dates, I guess maybe if I just start at the beginning. So it says in the cover memo, March 16th, it says city would pay all utility bills except video, board, electric, water is capped $7,000, encourage conservation. Am I to assume that that bullet point 4 will cover the, will be covered by the 3,000 per month in bullet point 3?
Yeah,
In some fashion?
yeah.
Okay. And
Based
then-
on the track record that we have of the usage down there in the past.
Okay. And then it goes on to the next paragraph to state that the city will basically reserve enough time for 14 events, meaning 14 days out of that 7-month period, or twice a month. And I guess my curiosity is, while I understand, and I don't think, at least for me in January, we talked about it, I ever envisioned them being city events. I envisioned them being entities that wanted to come in. Let's say a church comes in and says, hey, I got 500 people, I want to come in, I want to rent it this particular weekend.
Right.
What we're saying now is, we've given use of this facility off to this third party to manage. If you can get them to agree to allow to provide time for you to use it within their scheduled time, you can have access to it.
Well, kind of, pretty close. The way I see it happening is, if we move forward with this agreement, they would put their schedule together and give us 14 dates
Right.
that we could rent out the stadium, that fits into their schedule, so it works for them, but also then we would offer those to the community to run events. We're not proposing city events, we're
Correct.
proposing community events.
So in the event that there is interest, and when you say there's interest, people are calling, et cetera, I don't know what that interest level is, but
Probably
for the
half a
next
dozen.
7 months, I'm assuming that by doing this, you're assuring us it really isn't gonna, I guess what I wanna know is, we're not gonna get calls from, you know, a dozen entities that say, hey, I wanted to get this, and, you know, the 14 days are taken up.
I'd say I probably have half a dozen inquiries,
I just-
churches,
Right.
different things like that.
I guess just for me, like, I don't wanna have had this conversation in January and said, hey, we're gonna make this available for the community, and then, you know, we get into spring and we have community, entities that wanna use it and rent it, and say, oh, by the way, it's not available. And it's not that it's not available because we didn't make it available to the community, it's not available because we have handed off its availability to a single entity, for a single purpose, frankly, for users that are from, largely, you know, other communities and other counties. And I do have some concern with that, because it's not the conversation that we had in January. And I think that's part of the frustration that I felt when we were first proposed this back in February, is I felt it went, well, 180 degrees different than the conversation that we had when we realized we can't do this, but at the same time, we have this item. I kind of look at our other amenities and say, would we do that same thing to that degree for those other, you know, things that by and large, I guess, we could say the community owns. And so, I also note that between the two memos, and I appreciate this, as staff, you've said, at least, you've said, you know, you're making assumptions, and you keep referring to the costs. And so for me, I would only say to the mayor and council that if we do have those concerns, but we're gonna wait all the way until 7 months down the road, I don't wanna be the one sitting here 7 months down the road and have you come in and say, by the way, they paid us $3,000 a month, but it ended up costing us, I don't know, $25,000 more than what we anticipated, because, they used more lights, they used more water, et cetera, utilities. Because then we've done exactly the opposite of what we said we were gonna do in January, which is we weren't gonna eat this cost for any group. But here, I feel like we're sort of entering into an unknown agreement where it may be that, and so all I'm saying is, there should be some figure. And I don't care if it's a cap on it, but it should say something to the effect of, at the end of the 7-month agreement, that if there is an overage, that this group will cover up to X amount, let's say $10,000. So at least at the end of the day, I can say to the citizens, you know what, we at least put a number on to say we weren't gonna eat, all of it, because I'd hate to get to the end and know that we rented it out for this $21,000, but it ended up costing us $42,000, basically got half of what, you know what I mean, we anticipated. So I throw that out as,
It does
as a
cap water
suggestion.
usage at 7,000.
it has water usage.
So that's basically $1,000 a month. The electric, the big issue there is the lights on the fields. They're very expensive to operate. But we think $2,000, $3,000 less $1,000 for water, $2,000 will cover the cost of running the field lights.
So the
the
field
other
light's
thing is-
2,000, the water's 1,000.
And we're saying the 2,000
Right.
will
So
cover the
no, there's
electric.
no other utility costs we can expect,
Correct.
like the fertilizing, the weeding, trash removal.
Trash removal, there would be a dumpster down there.
And when you say water, you mean water and sewer, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing I would point out too is that if we don't let them use it, or don't let anybody use it, there's carrying costs we gotta do of mowing the grass, some of the things like that. And that's probably in the $4,000 or $5,000 range, something like that, that we would spend if no one's there.
For the course of the season.
That
I get
gives us,
that.
to me, that gives us a little cushion.
I got that in your first memo.
Yeah.
Under the agreement on item 1 term, it says the operator shall use, manage, and operate the stadium for the period. When it says manage, and then it goes on to 2 to refer to the operator again, does this mean everyone or just the MBG? So when it refers to the operator, it's just referring to MBG there, correct?
Yes.
Because it says operator shall be entitled to receive and maintain all proceeds of the operation of the stadium.
Yeah. Just them.
And does that matter if it's just for their activities or all activities?
Just for their activities.
So I want
less
to make
than
sure they don't have the ability as a third party that we're delegating basically the authority of this facility to, that they can't then rent it out to another party. So let's say we say, they say, you know what, this weekend we're not having baseball games, you know what? We got this other group that wants to use it, that's not specified within what to date has not been a specified group. There is no defined MBG at this time. So I'm just trying to figure out that if this group has it, can they then rent it out to other parties through the course of that term?
Yeah, I don't think there's
And
anything in
set
here.
terms for whatever that rental is.
So for example, there's a group that wants to have a wiffle ball tournament there. There's nothing that precludes them from renting it to them if they don't choose one of our 14 dates. If that's something we want to preclude them from being able to do, we'll have to put that in here.
And I guess that's why I asked, because it isn't really spelled out in number 2.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm just curious.
I think their intention, correct me if I'm wrong, their intention is to play baseball. But I guess it's possible they could rent it out for other events too.
I don't know, I feel like we're delegating a lot of sort of authority and responsibility to a group that really doesn't exist yet, on a very trial basis, at a lot of unknowns, especially cost, to allow them to then sublet that to other parties. I mean, it just seems like a risk that I would not be interested in taking.
Here's an example for you. A baseball team that's not part of the group, meaning it's not entitled to regular use of the stadium as part of the group, may want to host a game there. We anticipated them being able to come to us and us saying this is what the per game fee is to use the time that we have allotted for us on the field. So to answer your question, yes, we would expect to be able to do that.
And I have to tell you, I have a real problem with that. Let's say the Hagerstown Diamond Birds, is that a group, right? Let's say that you're running it, and then this group comes in and says, hey, you know, I want to use this, and you've specified them, but they ended up not being, you know, part of this group, and you get to charge them whatever you want for use of a public facility. I have a lot of difficulty with the group being able to do that in such a unilateral fashion and setting whatever fee that you want for, frankly, what you're arguing is supposed to be for the benefit of local youth opportunity to have the experience of.
But they are local youth. The other opportunity they have is to join our group and be a regular user.
But it's a temporary 7-month thing. I mean, does that mean if the high schools don't come in as part of this group that you'll be able to then determine if the high schools get to have their season there? At whatever cost you decide to set?
No, the high schools are going to be entitled to have their season there if they're permitted to. That's not up to us. They have other restrictions in place that are limiting them right now.
I'm saying if they don't join your group.
They don't have to be part of our group to do it. That was the intention from the get-go, was to give them an opportunity to play somewhere where there's an experience over and above any high school field in this county.
But are you going to set the fee for?
There is no fee for the high schools. We're not going to charge the public high schools or the private high schools to use the field for a game. The expectation is that just like at basketball and football games, that spectators would have to pay admission.
So if you're part of the group, you get to use it for free, or you got to pay a fee? Because I mean, these are like 8 different organizations from 4 different counties. I guess I'm trying to figure out how you're going to charge those 8 different organizations from 4 different counties and tell other groups they get to use it for free.
The members of the group are owed however many there end up being. Let's use an even number. Let's say that for purposes of the rent, there are 7 members. Each one of them would owe $3,000. That would be their share to the group to cover the rent. And anything we can do to offset that cost to each organization, we would try to do in terms of if there's somebody outside the group that wants to use it for a one-off event, then yes. Essentially outside of the 14 days, what this agreement is intended to be is an exclusive use agreement, which isn't any different than the agreement that the city Little Leagues have. And there doesn't stop anyone from making a donation to those Little Leagues to use their field. It's not any different from the softball tournaments that get hosted at City Park. Those teams pay good money to be in that tournament, part of which is for the benefit of playing on community parks. And the alternative is for the field to just sit there and no one use it. And that doesn't seem
Or
appealing.
different groups use it at different times of request.
Well, the only group that I've heard so far that certainly wants to use it is MSO.
Right, and I'm just trying to figure out who that group is and how they're going to allow other users to use it.
The MSO is the Maryland Symphony Orchestra.
No, I'm sorry, the MSB.
The MBG.
Yeah,
So far, it has an adult baseball league in it.
okay.
It has the Hagerstown Braves. It has the Smithsburg Blue Crabs. And it has at least I won't say an official representative, but a tacit representative from the school system to make sure that we're able to provide field time to the high schools if they're allowed to play there. And I say that's a big if right now because of the COVID restrictions that are being implemented and the lack of bus drivers.
Okay, so I think that's much more clear for me, because in this February memo, it lists, like I said, it lists 40 teams from Smithsburg, 3 organizations from Frederick County. It looks like 1 from Martinsburg, 2 from Chambersburg.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I'm reading that list. I don't have anything in front of me that says I'm about to enter into an agreement with a specific defined group. In other words, we do the ice rink board comes in. That is a created and established board of users of 7 or 8 different entities that are established. And this doesn't appear to be that, and so I'm trying to figure out, once we step off of that cliff, and say, hey, we've sort of delegated that to this other entity to manage and operate, what will be the feedback from all other users? And I think it's more than MSO, as Rodney's indicated, we have others that are gonna wanna come in and say, hey, we wanna use this, because one of the things I don't want to have happen is a user have a desire to use it, it's already set aside for a baseball group that's in this undefined group to use for some specific day, it not be available for that day, and then somebody drive by and go, well, I was gonna use it that day, but they said baseball was happening, and guess what, there's no baseball happening. I guess that's some of the concern, and I've expressed this, in conversations with you directly, that I would have happening, and I'm trying to sort of, one, limit that from happening, and number two, limit any, and I'll get to the fees in a moment, limit any sort of exorbitant, so to speak, of fee that would be associated with a non-affiliated group of an undefined organization to be able to use and get access to the facility.
So MBG is a tax exempt organization.
It will be, yes.
They're not.
Yeah, they have to apply.
We got a week and a half.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said they will be, and I'll just submit to you, I'm not sure that I see the utility in going through all of that before I know what this body's decision is going to be. There's a practical element to it. These are all organizations that on their own have a lot of work to do for their own upkeep and scheduling, and this is a busy time of year.
So once MBG becomes a tax exempt entity, MBG will be the ones who will hold the insurance on the facility.
That's correct.
That holds harmless the
That's
city of Hagerstown. So they actually will be an entity.
It's already been filed with the SDA.
All right.
It's what's
The only
the,
question I have.
what's the turnaround time for that process?
That usually takes within 7 days. I've seen it come a lot quicker. And then there's a process with the IRS to get your EIN. And the nonprofit status takes a while, but once you have an application pending, you are permitted to operate by law.
Okay. All right. I'm going to page 3. Now, I think you've answered a question on page 2, which is the insured. So the expectation is by April 1st, when we expect to execute operations at this facility, that this organization will be operating under an insured exempt status.
In insured status, exempt by provision of law.
Right.
Yes. Yes. I can't say we will be exempt because that requires determination by the IRS.
But you have an application in and you're all.
That's correct.
Okay, we
That's
understand.
correct.
Everything you can do, yeah.
I'm opposed to item E6, because I think you just pointed out the temporary, and this was in the prior suggestion, but it says to be considered for any future extension of this agreement, submit a report to the mayor and council of actual revenues and expenditures, et cetera. I don't see the purpose in having that included in this contract.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking there was just to give them some accountability when the season's over. We could take out the part about it for future extension.
As a matter of contract construction, I would tend to agree with you, Mr. Alshire. But I will state for the record that we understand that if there's to be any consideration beyond this season, we would have to make that report to this body and account transparently for everything that had happened in this season.
And let me interject real quickly, and then I'll shut up and you can continue. So we have an RFP out for that site, for an indoor soccer.
We will. I'm bringing it in next month to review it with you before we
Okay, so we
release
will.
it. I have it
So,
drafted.
let's just say we send the RFP out, turnaround on that's 90 days?
Yeah, at most.
Okay, 90 days. So now that's gonna put us at April, May, June, in the July timeframe. Even if we get a favorable RFP that everybody can live with, allowing MBG to operate at the stadium for 7 months is not gonna make a difference one way or another when it comes to moving forward on, if this body wants to move forward on an indoor sports facility. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't read that this, but I read this as to imply that after December 1, or by December 1, meaning operations in 2022. Right?
Yeah, I could tell you the intent was if nothing is gonna happen there next year and they wanna
Which is
try to use it
2022.
again, they'd have to come in and give you an accounting of what they did this year. That's the intent of that phrase, but I can edit it if necessary.
I just have a question about the structure. So you're becoming a nonprofit. How do you join your group? So you're saying you have members that are joining your group that you're going to prioritize with scheduling. What does that process look like?
Well, there's a number of organizations that have been there from the beginning. I don't know that we have a formal structure for soliciting additional groups that want to join. I don't think we're necessarily opposed to it either, because it would defer cost. The issue then becomes, it just thins out the scheduling, but, you know, that's just part of this whole process. So if there are additional groups that end up deciding they want to join us, then we certainly would entertain that.
So, but how do they join? Are they paying money? Is it?
They would have to agree to whatever share was the divided share of the member groups for the term of the agreement.
Which would include rent and field maintenance.
That's right.
Okay, so they have to agree to pay their share of your fee, but if someone doesn't join your group, then you're going to charge them a fee to play there. Is that correct?
If they would like to use the stadium and it's during the time we have reserved under the agreement, yes.
Okay.
So,
So it sounds like if it's, if you have 8 members and it's $3,000, $3,000 a month for the 7 months, you're gonna divide that total by the 8 members, and that's how you be a partner? Be a part of the group?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Plus the field maintenance, because they have to mow.
Right.
Which is thousands of dollars, keep the
Okay.
infield
So
looking
you
good,
put
and
all
all that
that cost
stuff.
together,
All
and
that's
then
gonna-
if you're part of the group, you have a share
A share
to
of that
pay.
That's correct.
Okay.
You would have the non-fiduciary responsibilities as well, so the care and maintenance.
Yeah.
so that's a good segue to section F on page 5 and page 6. It says, operator agrees to manage the stadium to provide fair and equitable time to groups and programs who are part of MDG. I guess my question is, it sort of interjects the city in being the manager of ensuring that times are fair and equitable. And I guess what I don't want to have happen is half of those groups come resting at the doorstep of these chambers and say, hey, wait a second, I'm not getting my fair share. They said this was gonna be for youth, and it's all adult baseball playing, all the good times, and you know what I mean? The good weekends and getting all the lights. I'm trying to figure out who manages the consternation that will arise, no differently than we saw at the ice rink, because we keep using that example, where they came in and said, hey, look, you know,
Exactly.
figure skating, no offense, is getting, you know, all of the good time.
Right.
We don't want that
who's in
either.
charge of that?
We don't want folks coming in here to bring that problem to you either.
But I got an agreement that looks like it reads like we are the avenue to reconcile that. I mean, when you read that section, you know, it says the city's gonna get copies of the programs. We're the sort of, you know, overseer of the contract to ensure that these things happen. So by default, you know what I mean, it's going to land here.
Well, I think the intent, what you said about the ice rink is exactly what was on our minds when we wrote that paragraph, is that we really don't want people to come in here and say, this team's getting all the times, the good time slots, and we're not getting any. What we're saying is they need to figure that out and have a fair and equitable system so that people don't do that. That's the intent of what we wrote.
Which actually leads into one of my questions. The 14 event dates that the city gets to select, will they be Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, or do we get like the bottom of the barrel 14 days?
I think it says one day's a Friday and one day's a Saturday.
Right.
Does it? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, didn't read that part.
On those days that would work for them, but it's still a Friday and a Saturday that hopefully would be the most desirable for people to use the
Okay.
stadium.
That's one of my questions.
And then if people don't want to use them, we don't have it booked, then there's a clause in there that they can play baseball that day.
Okay. Just two more quick questions. The person to manage, I guess, the coordinator, who manages that person? Do you?
They would be, yeah, they'd be a
Is
city
that-
employee. I see them working very part-time, but when they have an events, we should have somebody there.
I mean, I know that Parks and Rec is busy for the next
Right.
7 months. Is that
Scott and I have some
something-
ideas of some people that might be interested in doing that, that know the stadium well, that know where the electric shut-offs are, the water shut-offs are, everything at all the, it's a sprawling place. There's a lot going on out there, and
Yeah, it's big.
you need somebody that knows it pretty well.
Thank you. And then my last question, Travis, when the community falls in love with this thing and, the experience for these kids is just magical and you have more than 8 members in your group, and we decide that the RFP looks real, real good and we're gonna move forward with the indoor sports complex, what is your plan?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know.
Also, too.
I don't know, because this isn't something that when you get involved in trying to provide baseball experience to amateur ball players, that you ever envision will be an opportunity. And it happens to be one, we think, a good one, that could make good for all involved, even the city. I think we are realistic. We understand this is not the desired long-term use of the facility, so we know that at some point it's going to come to an end. I will say that I've had a number of calls and emails and messages about folks really looking forward to, particularly those parents of senior players in high school, because they were not able to play last year. They're already talking about, can we have senior night there? Can we do this? Can we do that? So I think beyond sort of the baseball part of it, to provide something that makes people forget for 2 hours what we've all had to live through for the last year, it just seems like the right thing to do. We're not in it, I think we said this last time, to make money. We're not going to make money. This is a big ask of the groups that are involved. And we know it's a big ask of the city to bestow responsibility of its facility to us. But we think it will be one that we all look back on and say, wow, I'm glad we did that.
I mean, I'm not denying the fact that, it is a great idea. It's a good, it is a very good idea. I think that my concern is that community, if the community falls in love with this concept, right? And we have goals of that project. Councilman Alshire has been working on that for years, to take that away because the community falls in love with something that's already there is concerning to me. So I hope that there is a plan for when you get all of these members into your group that, really love the concept and want to play under the lights and the experience, just like you're describing, that there is a plan afterward in order for us to be able to, confidently make that decision before the community really talks to us about, look, this is something that we want to see stay, when there's been a clear indication of another project.
Part of that may be just about managing expectations from the beginning. So
Fair enough.
your point is taken. Thank you.
I have two last questions. The first is, I got a copy of this, the map where it shows the stage, and I'm not real familiar with scale.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious, because it appears that that's sort of trying to do it to make sure that it adheres to all the other stuff that we're trying to keep in check here, which is to keep the place available specifically for baseball. And so I'm trying to figure out, in addition to all of the other limitations placed in this contract to do so, whether that's a viable scale.
It's probably a little smaller, like, after I met with the symphony out there, they probably will have a stage that's bigger than that. I guess the intent of that drawing was I wanted to show you how they would set up, and that they would try to stay as much as possible on the skin part of the infield, and the fans or the patrons of the event would be up in the stands. The plan isn't to put a whole bunch of people out on the field.
So we would not be able to have activities in any of those 14 days where fans would be able to spread out across the grass area?
You could, as long as they pay the deposit for field damage, which is what we've learned that other stadiums do. So they put a deposit in, like the Symphony, I think they would put down, I think it's a $3,000 deposit. If they damage the field, they rut the field, they do anything, break our irrigation system, that money would be used to make those repairs.
Which brings me to my last question, because I go to this municipal stadium rental guidelines, which looks like it's written more so for these 14 days we're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
I guess I'm just curious, when I look at the fee schedule, and let's just take a for-profit organization, $3,000 for the day. In addition, these other, like field damage deposit, et cetera. It appears we're charging the single users the same amount to use it for a single day that we're providing for another user to use it an entire month.
Yeah.
That seems odd to me. I mean, to me, like when I revert back to the conversation in January, we're gonna sort of make it available for the community sort of like at a cost neutral basis. And then we tell the community, your cost for the day is $2 or $3 grand, and that's cost neutral to us. But the cost of this organization is the same price for an entire month, and that's cost neutral to us. The numbers in my head don't add up. And I certainly don't want to hear at the end of the day, at the end of this process, at the end of the summer, we find out that, one, this relationship ends up not being cost neutral, and then in addition to that, the groups that we basically charged, you know what I mean? Wait a second, you know, they entered into an agreement with this group to subsidize it for about 7 months, but at the same time sort of charged us what we believe an exorbitant rate is to be able to get access, the same access to this amenity, you know what I mean, for a single event.
Yeah.
And that doesn't resonate in my mind to be the same objective that I felt we sort of entered into in January. And I guess that's, and again, I go back to our last meeting, that's sort of where I think I have the continued consternation. And this fee schedule and this separate sheet of these very limited days seems only to speak further to that, especially given the fact that, frankly, this is a city-owned facility that we are now sort of handing out, you know, to in a very sort of tri-state manner, and then it appears making it fairly exorbitant for them same city organizations to have access to use.
Where did you arrive at your numbers, Rodney, on, you know, the nonprofit city organization as opposed to the for-profit organization?
They're basically, I looked at the Ag Center, I looked at the Frederick Fairgrounds. I tried to get information on the Frederick baseball stadium. I didn't get much on that, but it's basically the same order of magnitude that they charge. So I figure if we have an event there, we'll probably have to clean the bathrooms before the event, clean the bathrooms after the event. We want to have an attendant there to make sure if there's any problems that there's somebody there. So all those things are factored into that. Yeah. They're taking care of cleaning the bathrooms, they're taking care
Right,
of taking
right, I
care of the
understand
fields,
all
all
that,
that stuff.
right.
That's why their rent is lower, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But these are kind of the going rates for a facility that's self-contained, that you could charge admission to, that's, you know, fenced. These are kind of the going rates from what I could tell from my.
And let's just say that some nonprofit organization wanted to rent it for a day at $1,500 to have an event, and then they charged there are patrons a fee to come into the event. That fee money is all theirs, right?
I thought it read that the city gets that funding.
Yeah, so if you had a concert there, you could charge money and that would help pay your rental.
Right,
Are you guys okay with the fees?
I am.
I mean, yeah, I'm fine with them.
Thoughts?
I mean, I'm not, I think that that we're setting a completely different set of standards.
You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm hung up on the $3,000 fee for-profit.
I mean, it's definitely a lot. I do agree with that, but it's a big place and a lot to take care of. And if it's comparable,
Well, that's what I'm thinking. If
I
it's
agree, if it's
comparable to what
comparable.
what you've researched, then
Yeah, and I can tell you, the people I've talked to, they didn't bat an eye at that, because they're talking about bringing in food trucks, charging admission.
okay.
yeah, okay, so we're good with the fees. Are we good with the agreement as proposed?
Do we need to discuss the alcohol part?
Yeah, I would appreciate that. I guess I just need to know if you are in favor of that or not. And then we'll have to work out the details in the application for them to provide their alcohol license, and they'll have to provide security if there's alcohol, I would assume. So I guess I just need to kind of know a thumbs up or thumbs down on that issue.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine
Okay,
with
so-
alcohol
Yeah.
for an event.
Because that's not additional cost to us. I mean, the person who rents it has to
Right.
handle all the,
It's more on them.
yeah.
It's no different, I don't look at this any different than I look at, having an event on South Potomac Street, or, the Maryland Theater having an event there, or anything else.
The advantage here, though, is it's all self-contained.
Yeah, right, 100%.
There's a gate.
Yeah, no additional cost for fencing or anything else.
Right. There's not many facilities like that.
No, there's not.
All right, Jude, what else do you need from us? You guys are good with the proposal as planned?
Yep.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Travis.
All right, up next, traffic issues. Switch gears, Rodney.
Okay. So, just like to quickly go over, it's really two traffic issues that we would need mayor and council's authorization to implement if you so choose. Let's do the simpler one first, and that would be the May Street at Woodland Way. We had a request from the neighborhood to make it a four-way stop. We don't put four-way stops in lightly. We require that they meet the national warrants for stop signs, because if you put them in unwarranted, there are issues that are around that I don't think we as an entity want to get involved with. So we looked at it closely. It is unwarranted because of the traffic volumes and the accident history there. But there are a lot of other contributing factors at this intersection. There's very limited sight distance on May Street. There's a horizontal curve in May Street that makes it hard to see this intersection as you're approaching it. And there are some speeds there that are higher than 25 miles an hour that we've measured. So we're recommending that that be made a four-way stop, and we would need authorization for you to do that. On the other issue, it's really a couplet, it's a pair of streets proposed to be made one way. We've had complaints from the residents that live on North Avenue and also over here on East Avenue about the narrowness of the street because it's two-way and their parked cars are often sideswiped. It's exactly the same issue we had on Canton Avenue a year ago when we decided to make it one way. So the proposal would be to make North Avenue westbound, coming from the fairgrounds towards Potomac Street. 15 of the 18 residents on the street said that they would like to see that happen. We did get some feedback from police and fire, and I think they're here. At least the fire department's here. They had some concerns about that, and I'll let them speak for themselves about that. If we did this, we'd have to modify 3 traffic signals, and we'd probably switch all the parking to the north side, which is customary for parking to be on that side. On East Avenue, it's kind of a similar situation, except it would be made eastbound from Potomac over to Cannon. 18 of the 24 residents responded that they'd like to see that happen. Also, there'd be 3 traffic signals we'd have to modify there. The Board of Traffic and Parking reviewed this, and they felt like this was a good thing to happen based on the request from the residents. For the fire department, I don't know if you guys have anything you wanted to share.
Good afternoon. Generally speaking, I think the fire department would prefer to maintain two-way access on any street. But there's no question that these streets in question, and before you this evening, are particularly narrow. So what I would say is that the fire department will do whatever they have to do to gain access to those areas, and that's largely a function of time of day, day of week. So North Avenue is less problematic for us because the first due engine there would actually be traveling south of Mulberry Street to access it. On the other hand, East Avenue may interfere with which engine arrives first or second, and that should be secondary to the fact that as long as we're responding to shift commander out of the Market House complex, one way east is not going to hurt us in arrival there. So that's the fire department's perspective. If we keep them two-way, we would. But in this particular case, and I did go back and look, we've had 2 incidents in my tenure as chief where we've either clipped mirrors on one of our rigs or whatever, trying to get past a FedEx truck or anything else on East Avenue. So.
I think the last thing I'll say is Public Works said it would be easier for them to plow snow if it was one way. And our waste collection, waste management, it would be safer for them if it was one way. Yeah, so all those factors need weighed into all this.
I have paid out multiple claims out of my insurance agency because of East Avenue, so I would appreciate one way as well.
I live there. I lived on East Avenue, and you always have to pull over for the other car to come down a lot, so
You guys go with that?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm okay with that, definitely.
definitely May Street.
Well, now, just so you know, like I said during the meeting, board meeting, careful what you wish for. You know, I have a 4-way stop at Woodland Way and Park Lane, and I can guarantee you, 70% of the traffic
Doesn't see it.
doesn't even stop.
Yeah, that's my fault.
So I said, next time you won't be asking for a 4-way stop, you'll be asking for more police presence. So that's just how it works.
Exactly, we see that all the time. That's
Yeah.
part of when they're not warranted, that's what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Rodney.
Rodney.
All right, Consolidated General Services Agreement. Nancy.
I think this will be fairly easy to get through. This is Kellen Douglas, he's our water and sewer engineer, and this is the first time he's attended a council meeting. He's worked extensively with the county on the Consolidated General Service Agreement amendments, and most importantly, working with the county to develop the map that you saw a little earlier that is now up there. The original Consolidated General Service Agreement goes back to the 70s. It was redone in the mid-90s. And then since then, there have been 12 proposed amendments. Not all of them adopted. Number 5, number 8, and number 11 were not adopted. Number 11 you have not seen yet, and number 11 is the blue area in the top, and that is the Mogginsville area, and the county has requested that in the redo of the Consolidated General Service Agreement to kind of collapse everything into one agreement and revoke and reenact that, that we go ahead and incorporate what would have been amendment number 11 to transfer the flow back to the county, which is currently coming to the city. So I don't have any objections to incorporating that into this agreement. I just wanted to make sure that when we brought this to you, either in April or May, that you were aware that amendment number 11 is incorporated into what will be called the Joint Service Area Agreement. So the Consolidated General Service Agreement will go away and it'll have a new name. The area that's kind of yellow, yellow tan, that is the existing consolidated, the existing areas in the Consolidated General Service Agreement that comes to the city. What's important to mention with that area in particular is that when the mapping was initially done, it went across property boundaries. So in some cases, properties were cut in half, or so there's some cleanup associated with property boundaries. So if a property was in at all, it's in completely now. There is some cleanup in the Fountainhead area where property 1 was in, property 2 was not on, and so all of those properties are now shown in there. There was a property or two, I think, out towards the Marsh Pike area, not Marsh Pike up, but kind of going north, where they're on the sewer system, but they weren't showing up in their entirety on the amendments. So we went ahead and we incorporated them in as just incremental cleanups so that it actually the map fully represents the area that is coming into the system. And it'll kind of be, the map kind of defines the new boundary. Moving forward, the language will remain the same. If there's a need or a request by either the mayor, council, or by the county commissioners to amend the agreement, the language will still be in there that it can be amended, but all amendments must be approved by both bodies. So all of that language will stay the same. The area in pink is the flow transfer agreement area, and per the direction provided by mayor and council, we will move forward with making the system improvements to bring that flow back into the city's system. So within a couple years, the only area in the flow transfer agreement, 3 to 5 years, will be the area that's in yellow. So some major cleanup to the paperwork, but there'll be also some, if you will, major cleanup to the mapping as well. And it's our intent right now to bring this back before mayor and council in April for approval, but that will be contingent on getting all of the details worked out associated with the various areas in the agreement, so that everybody is satisfied with where we're at. And with that, if you guys have any questions?
Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you. Your first council meeting, you didn't even have to say anything. Look at that.
Couldn't we all have been that lucky?
Really?
The expansion of the enterprise zone. Welcome.
Here tonight to discuss the expansion of the enterprise zone. City and county staff have been working to jointly submit an application to Maryland Commerce by April 15th of 2021. The enterprise zone provides property tax credits for construction and rehabilitation investments and provides income tax credits for job creation. The action we're requesting tonight is support of the recommended expansion of the enterprise zone boundaries, along with a special session on April 6th for public hearing and an April 20th special session to adopt a resolution for the expansion. Some history about the enterprise zone is it was designated on December 14th of 1992 and expanded in renewed and expanded in 2002 and 2012. The enterprise zone is set to expire December 14th of 2022, with city and county staff expected to pursue a renewal at that time. There are currently 37 enterprise zones in the state of Maryland, and an additional besides Hagerstown's is the town of Hancock currently. Eligibility for enterprise zone benefits. A business must be located inside the zone with minimum requirements for construction and rehabilitation, investment, or job creation. So there's two different zones for Hagerstown, one in the city center where $5,000 for construction or rehabilitation is necessary, or job creation, one job being created, or outside the city center with $50,000 of construction or rehabilitation and 5 jobs being created. For the investment level, we do not account for machinery or equipment purchases, and a job is defined as a full-time position for 35 hours, 150% of the federal minimum wage, and employed for at least 6 months. Eligible business types would be manufacturing, warehousing, research and development, corporate regional offices, and service bid industries, and mercantile or retail in the city center itself. The incentives that would be offered in the enterprise zone would have two components. One, the real property tax credit over a 10-year period, years 1 through 5 having 80% change in assessed value, 70% for year 6, 60% for year 7, 50% for year 8, 40% for year 9, and 30% for year 10. The state of Maryland reimburses local jurisdictions for 50% of that revenue lost during this time, and it's subject to an annual budget review, but there's not been a year-to-date which the state of Maryland has not made that payment to the localities. The second benefit would be the income tax credit. Either it's a 1 or 3 year credit for wages paid to eligible new employees, $1,000 per new employee, or $6,000 for over a 3-year period, depending on location. Some of the process and timeline for the application for the enterprise zone review is the Commerce Department looks at it every April 15th and October 15th of every year. City and county are desiring to submit the application by the April 15th deadline. This year, due to the pandemic, they're a little bit more flexible in receiving the resolutions back from the local jurisdictions. So we're, with your approval, looking to submit the application for the 15th with the resolution coming after that application date. So the scheduled order of schedule looks like the work session today, 2 advertisements to run the following 2 weeks, a special section on the 6th. We're intending to submit on the 15th deadline, with the record being open until the 16th with a resolution on the 20th. Washington County is expecting to have their public hearing on March the 30th. The expansion of the enterprise zone areas, only certain areas are eligible. So the 4 things that the Commerce Department looks at for each census tract is the average rate of unemployment that is at least 150% of the greater of the average rate of unemployment in either the state or the United States during the most recent 18-month period. The population in the area qualifies as low-income poverty area. 70% of the families in the area have incomes that are less than 80% of the median family income in the political subdivision, or the population in the area has decreased by 10% between the most 2 recent censuses, with either significant abandonment or demolition of property or significant property tax arrearages. The city and county are proposing an expansion of the boundaries of the zone. Currently, the total acreage is 4,094. We're proposing an expansion of 282 additional acres to 4,376. And at this time, the city or in the county are proposing to expand the enterprise zone in only the 10.01 census tract, which is an eligible and qualified tract under one of the four terms stated above. And this includes industrial properties along Maryland Avenue, Sweeney Drive, Sherman Avenue, and Oak Ridge, which are highlighted in the attached maps.
Yeah, I'm good.
So,
Absolutely.
I have a question. On the map, because it's, I mean, it's starting to look like a legislative district, you know, designed by state legislators. But, I guess I'm trying to figure out, I read here where it says that the areas delineated are zoned industrial. Are you indicating that all of the green areas shown, they're all zoned industrial?
There are some small amounts near Sherman that are residential that were included because it has to be contiguous to the next parcel. So to get to some of those larger industrial parcels towards the south for Maryland Avenue and Oak Ridge, we had to make them contiguous.
Yeah, and I guess, and please understand, I mean, I actually live, you know, blocks from that area, but I'm looking at this area that's undeveloped across on the backside of Marion, that sort of dead ends, what is it, Moeller or something over there? Is that entire green swath industrial zone?
Not the entire thing, no, but we had to make it contiguous, so it had to touch another parcel.
So I guess I asked that because here we're going to approve a map that we're gonna send to a state agency to ask for an extension. We're gonna tell them that the lands we're looking at doing this to are industrial. And we obviously have citizens that live in neighborhoods in these areas that we're now saying, based on a map, on a color on a map, that it's some use that it's not. And there are stub-in roads in and out of those neighborhoods that then may be misled to believe that they live next to a land that's zoned other than what it is. And I get that you gotta show this to be contiguous, but, you know, I look at that area that you're trying to link to, and I get why you're trying to do it. But clearly, I don't think any of those folks that have bought into that neighborhood over the last 50 years of its existence, if you will, you know, believe that those stub-in roads are stubbed into industrial zone property, because it's not, it's residential property. I just think that that's misleading to the public that then's impacted by the fact that you've now asked for this expansion, and now potential developers have the belief they can go in, get these credits, and develop land directly adjoining this existing residential neighborhood in a manner that that residential neighborhood bought into believing that it wasn't going to be. I would just have some conversation with the neighborhood before I did that.
I think for the purpose of submitting the application to the state, we may be able to revise the maps to address that concern and show them as residentially zoned. So I believe we're not saying that the residentially zoned areas would be targeted for development. So if, I hear what you're saying, and I think we could clarify it in the application submission to the state.
Again, I would either clarify it in that manner or clarify to the residents
Right.
adjoining that land that believe it is zoned, which it is, residential, and to be developed for residential, that connect to those residential streets, that's the expectation that they can continue to expect, and not see this and have an expectation that suddenly, even though the zoning hasn't changed, we've literally started the ball rolling toward that change and that different use, because we've said we're gonna incentivize that change to happen. And I get that you kind of squeezed in a little because you're basically behind the South End Shopping Center, you know what I mean? And then you got that area at the railroad, then you got that neighborhood, Marion and whatever those other streets are that sort of end. I would assume that's not, you know what I mean? There is a separation there. There are stubbed-in streets in that neighborhood. You know, that's different. That's different than when you go across the street and you have that expectation at the end of Sweeney Drive that you're gonna continue that process of that type of development along Sweeney, because that's what's developed there. That's much different than the other side of the street. where clearly those residents that live in those communities and have for decades have a different idea what to expect their stub-in streets are gonna be stubbed into. That's, and I get you're trying to make that contiguous, but I would skinny that up somehow to really separate that.
Any other questions? We're good? Good. Good. All right. Hagerstown Fire Department strategic plan. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chief Kleck and I want to take about 15 minutes of your time this evening and give you an annual update to our 5-year strategic plan that you first saw last March 3rd. And that was the result, particularly speaking to our 2 new council members. Other than the orientation, we were able to present you a ton of work to prepare a 5-year strategic plan that was designed to be a working and living document, revised annually, so that we could keep up with any changes in the landscape, so on and so forth. So this is that annual update. We have purposely limited it to 15 minutes or so. Just to remind you, there are 17 strategic recommendations and over 66, almost 70 specific recommendations in this 5-year plan. More importantly, for the newest council members, I think it provides you photographs, it provides you history of how the HFD grew over a century, really, to where we are today and some of the struggles we face. Our intent is clearly to provide you with this living document that changes constantly with the environment and growth. We would intend to be here every year, and we simply want to arm Mayor and Council with historical background and data necessary to maintain what we consider best-in-class services. So with that said, I'm going to turn the floor over to Chief Kleck for some 1-year accomplishments.
So as the chief said, we'd just like to review what we've accomplished in the last year. We were here March 3rd, and within 2 weeks, we experienced our first COVID exposure to our on-duty personnel here in the city on South Prospect Street. One of the biggest accomplishments that we've had was we were able to maintain our staffing and continuity of operations through the duration of the COVID-19 pandemic. And while we did have personnel affected, we only had one hospitalization, that long-term hospitalization of one of our active members. And our success can be contributed to our early planning and ongoing actions with the most up-to-date information we had available. We had one of our personnel implanted in the county EOC for 86 days. He developed relationships there. We could contact a Department of Health doctor day or night, and we had the most up-to-date information when we had somebody exposed on duty. We were able to prevent any other employees from being exposed from them through isolation and through other protective measures. We developed and piloted our in-service inspection and pre-planning program for non-sprinklered and commercial buildings using the Insurance Service Office criteria. However, due to the second wave of COVID, in late October, we had to suspend that, but we do anticipate restoring that program in the second or third quarter of calendar year 2021. We identified and initiated negotiations for land acquisition for 2 properties for future strategic location of fire rescue stations. One of those just south of the Arts and Entertainment District on South Potomac Street, and another in the city's west end. And finally, we placed in service 86 grant-funded self-contained breathing apparatus with accessories. We were coming up on the expiration that the cylinders for those breathing apparatus have a life cycle of 15 years. We were coming up on that at the beginning of this month, and last year we applied for the grant. It was awarded. The total cost of the project was $673,000 $76. The city's match for that was 10%, so we managed to pull that project off for a little over $67,000.
So as we look at some of our strategic goals most relevant here this evening, we performed an annual self-assessment. When I say that, the entire command staff looks at the landscape. And it certainly appears the biggest change that's different this year than all other times I've been before Mayor and Council as your fire chief is that it would appear that annexation south on Route 65 by an additional 1.5 miles is all but imminent. It's just a matter of timing. If that is the case, and if we want to provide services through the fire department to that area of the county the whole way down to Wrench and/or Poffenberger Road, then I would say we really need to reconsider disbanding or merging 5 engines into 4. I think there's still some opportunities there, but that merger may occur with Funkstown rather than 2 city engine companies. It's still my recommendation that the first Hagerstown Hose Company relocate out of the unit block at South Potomac Street to land that will be in front of you, I believe, on April 6th in a work session to talk about in more detail. We have collaborated this year during the COVID thing. We didn't sit on our heels with Kathy's group of PCAD. This strategic plan will be incorporated into the next city comprehensive plan. The fire department was kind of absent from that in the past, with a particular focus on the medium growth areas identified in that plan. We've also continued to work collaboratively with the American Red Cross for smoke detector installations. Washington Goes Purple for addiction prevention. We remain engaged in that. If you continue to see our folks running around on Friday, fire chief included, in a purple golf shirt, it's because that's our support publicly for that program. We are in the middle of an ISO 5-year review you heard about last week. I won't go through the details of that, but what I'm most happy about is the collaboration we have with the water department in this review that will find a way, working between the fire department and the water department, to fully meet the requirements of the ISO, which is to do a real flow test on 20% of the fire hydrants in each of the 5 water zones. It sure appears we're going to make that happen, and that can only work for the citizens. We've looked at storage of firefighter water, particularly in Zone 5 out of Robinwood, where there's been some high-profile fires. We are having really meaningful conversations about meter capacity and what that really means to delivering water on the fire ground in all areas of the city. I'm sorry to report that already this year, in the month of February, we have endured 4 civilian fire deaths in the city of Hagerstown. That is very, very unusual. If you all follow the emails that have been forwarded about those fires, even though I hold strongly that every fire could be prevented and every fire death could be prevented, there was nothing in either of these incidents that was going to stop that from happening, I believe. Very proud that we have already filled the vacancies created by the trickle-down effect of Doug DeHaven's retirement. Anybody that knew or worked with Doug anywhere in the city spent a little over 36 years, most of which is fire marshal, very difficult position to replace. He has been replaced by Dale Fishhack, and just yesterday, the trickle-down position from that, we started Scott Wolf as FM3. So we have some planned training to further expedite the fire protection portion of plans reviews. I know that's important in the economic development scheme. It's important to PCAD, and I will tell you that we are laser focused to do whatever we can to keep that up. Just today, that staff was on the North Point site 3 times to make sure that their fire pump and water supply tested and passed which I'm happy to say, even in spite of some problems. So we understand our priorities, and we're very excited about participating in all elements of city government. Finally, we've hired 4 firefighters recently. As we sit here this evening, we anticipate maybe losing up to 2 of our firefighters to county government in their plan. We don't know that yet. It's my understanding that that academy in the county is to begin on March 22nd. So my position is that anybody that wants to make that leap owes the city 2 weeks' notice like any other employer. And we'll see how that plays out. We do and will be asking, as summer ends, we believe that one of our other deputy fire marshals is probably going to retire at the end of the year. And if that's the case, which we believe it is, we'll be asking for support to enroll another candidate in the fall HPD Police Academy, which takes approximately 6 months to complete.
We reviewed our standard of cover and deployment of our resources, and as the chief indicated, we have anticipated imminent annexation down the Route 65 corridor to Wrench Road. We'd like to have, ISO likes to see an engine company every 1.5 miles. This will extend the city boundary an additional 1.5 miles, which is why we need to continue looking south, and also why we need to reevaluate the combination of 5 engines into 4, a 4-engine model, and consider staying at 5. We've also looked at additional properties to the west end. We've been talking about the Salem Avenue corridor, at least in the fire department, that's grown, and also out Garland Grow, to move a fire station further west. Our current facilities, we've addressed a number of life safety issues within the living quarters. We have some of the oldest fire stations, one of the oldest fire stations in the state of Maryland, 33 South Potomac Street. So we've made some headway there in updating the facilities for our personnel. But we still have the outdated facilities based on locations within the city. They go back to the 1800s, where it took the amount of time it took a horse to run 8 blocks. Vehicles and equipment, we want to thank you for the continued support for our capital projects. We have purchased 2 additional pumpers on our multi-year pumper contract with a 3rd on order that is due for delivery this summer, and also 2 additional support vehicles that we've purchased in 2020. We continue to use the best technology that we can afford. We've implemented the ESO Firehouse software, which is a complete records management system for the entire operations of the department. We're in that implementation process now, which we anticipate should be done by the end of this fiscal year. And we're also continuing to plan for future radio CIP projects, working collaboratively with the county to plan for CAD upgrades, station learning, and other opportunities for economy of scale purchases and projects. One of those, we're currently in a regional grant request through the Assistance of Firefighters grant program through FEMA for portable radio upgrades.
So in terms of current strategic goals, I'm proud to report that staff has reviewed our entire policy and procedure manual, SOG manual, over 150 documents. They've all been updated from 2006. We've rescinded the ones that were outdated and fully embraced citywide policies and procedures that affect the fire department, including the personnel manual, et cetera. Safety and wellness, if you're not aware, there for some time has been 16 firefighter life safety initiatives that are published nationwide. And we were able to form a joint management and labor committee that has been working through those 16 initiatives. And I'm proud to say that we've made tremendous progress in that area. And I think it shows on our fairgrounds, it shows in our overall performance. We are in the process of developing policies that we hope will reduce both the frequency and severity of vehicle collisions in the fire department. Certainly under the training, certification, and professional development umbrella, what I would say to Mayor and Council is rest assured that some portion of every shift is devoted to training and professional development of our staff. And that clearly shows from my chair. I'm very, very proud of the people and the leadership in our organization. I am disappointed to report to you this evening that in spite of 5.5 years of continuous effort, the two highest priorities I identified when I got here, funding and governance, have stalled with zero progress in the system we're in. And honestly, I'm about at wit's end as to what else to do for my chair back from there. But nevertheless, last week, I'm not sure you're even aware of this yet, we were notified, you may remember that 2 budget years in a row, we had asked the county to match $500,000 with a CIP project for the city for upgrades for a multi-story burn building, flashover simulator, and whatever else we could get in $1 million at our Bowman Avenue training facility. They withdrew both years, and then just late last week, we were notified that they are now going to proceed with their own multi-million-dollar project at Roxbury. They invited us to the project, and we declined. I did have a conversation with the city administrator about that, and we'll do what we have to do. It's my highest recommendation that we continue to invest in Bowman Avenue. That's where we've trained firefighters since 1966. It's where we can do real Class A burns. It's my belief that whether they move forward or not, the county is not going to be able to do those kind of dirty burns next to the largest housing development in Washington County and an elementary school. I don't think they'll be allowed to do that by the citizens, but nonetheless.
So finally, priority issues for the remainder of fiscal year ―21 and fiscal year '22. First, we want to create an amendment to the city charter to rename the fire department, Hagerstown Fire Department, to Hagerstown Fire Rescue. It will assume responsibility for all elements of the all hazards mission of the fire department, including hazardous materials, specialty technical rescue, and emergency medical services. The current language is unacceptably out of date. Basically says that the fire department's responsible to respond to fires, deal with explosions, and we're to give money to volunteer companies. And we need to update that language to reflect what we actually do. We have 2 critical human resources needs. Last year, when we were here on March 3rd, we gave our initial presentation of our strategic plan, and one of the things that we were to bring back within a few months was a proposed multi-year staffing plan. Due to COVID and the budget restrictions and concerns that we've had, we have postponed that. We still have that, and we would like to bring that to you. And secondly, the replacement process for the retiring fire chief. Again, as we've talked about facilities, we would like to negotiate, continue to negotiate the purchase of 2 to 3 strategically located sites to complete the phase 1, which is land acquisition of a 3-phase process over 3 budget years. So phase 2 being design and phase 3 being the build-out. But specifically this year, we want to complete phase 1 and acquire the land for at least 2 to 3 sites. And you've been briefed on the potential sites near Bester, just south of the Arts Entertainment District, and we have 2 others preliminary that we're looking at as well. The relocation of the Washington Square facility further west to accommodate that growth, and then a 3rd site near the Route 65 Oak Ridge Drive, planned for the imminent annexation to the south end.
So in closing remarks, I want to make sure that Mayor and Council is fully aware of 2 employees' contribution to the COVID-19 virus. First, has already been mentioned, Will Ball is a fire apparatus operator assigned to our Truck 3 in the East End. Because of his skill set, we assigned him early on to the EOC, and he, as Mark said, spent 86 days there. What is not well understood is probably the 300 days he spent fielding phone calls, weekends, nights. Every single exposure we had in the Hagerstown Fire Department was referred to FAO Ball, who then had a personal contact with Dr. Gaviria at the Washington County Health Department. They did the contact tracing so that it wasn't done one way one day, another way another day, and that's how we have been able to control our losses. When people were exposed, we probably had 40 exposures over the past year, and we were able to minimize those, and thanks to the health department and Will in particular, I don't know of another department that's been able to pull that off. His contribution is just outstanding and well above his pay grade and duties and responsibilities. Second, Dale Fishhack, who was running the operations, or co-running the operations section of the EOC for that same period of time. We pulled him out of there on January 1st when he was promoted to fire marshal, and we have not replaced him. I want to personally thank Mayor and Council for 5.5 years of devotion to this fire department at a time when things weren't always good in terms of the relationship between the rest of city government and the HFD. And I will tell you, I hope we've earned your trust. You've certainly earned ours. And you all know me pretty well now. I am the plan to work the plan type guy. That's how I've managed my whole career. And if we can continue to do that, whatever happens in our future, you're gonna have a world-class fire department here in the city of Hagerstown. So I really do appreciate that. You know, one of the things going on here now, and there's no easy solution for it, we had to assemble 41 pieces of apparatus on Linganore Avenue almost 3 weeks ago to get an effective response force necessary to handle all the moving parts up there. High volume of fire, 3 fire fatalities, all the other things that went with that on the investigative side, liaisons at the hospital, the burn unit, the state medical examiner's office. There's a lot of moving parts when you have that. And part of that problem, the majority of that problem, is staffing. So what I would tell you is, and I know that the people who've been around more than a minute, particularly Councilmember Brucci, have heard the staffing thing out of the fire department year after year after year. It can no longer be ignored. 2020, the gold standard, NFPA 1710, has now ranked fires we go to as low, medium, high-risk exposure. There's no way that we can ever staff this fire department to deal with a handful of high-risk exposures like the Alexander House, like Potomac Towers, high-rises, that kind of thing. But we should absolutely be able to produce on a first alarm assignment the medium risk, which are apartment buildings, strip shopping centers, and small commercial buildings. We should strive to do that, and I'm asking you tonight to support us moving forward with that. With that said, I would simply open it up to questions and comments, anything we could do. I see Chief Hopkins joined us. He had a busy day out in Black Rock Estates. He was the incident commander there, and we had 3 engines, a ladder, a boss, and his aide committed out there in a 9,000 square foot McMansion. So they did a tremendous job out there today, and we want to publicly acknowledge him as well.
I want to thank, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Chief, I want to thank you and the department. I know that, I mean, I hear your cries for staff. I do, and like you said, I've heard them for years, and we've tried to address as much as we can, given our limited budget. But with the staff that you have, the trained professionals who show up every day and do that job, I have the utmost respect for them, and I know that we have the cream of the crop right here in Hagerstown, Maryland. So I go to bed at nighttime feeling safe about that. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you, JLO Chiefs, for all you do.
I mean, I'll definitely echo that. There's not enough thanks to give you guys. You guys are incredible. Not to rain on the parade of celebration of the good things that you've accomplished, but I kind of want to go back to the funding and governance. You kind of mentioned it, but for everything I know, the county is just flat out ignoring us at this point. And in my opinion, it appears that we are at a stalemate over the 911 payment, which we have continually told them we would release if they would have conversations with the city. And Scott, Chief, you can correct me if you know something that I don't, but at this point, we're just not even getting a response. And I don't know if you have anything additional, if there's been any movement at all.
Well, Scott, do you want to take that first? Thank you. You know, the American Fire Service has nothing on the Native Americans in this country. If you look at the history of that thing, on a good day, one tribe couldn't get together and get along with the other. The Paiutes couldn't deal with the Apaches couldn't deal with the Comanches, or whatever, until they had a common enemy, the United States Capitol. Now, I'm proud to report that I think the county volunteer-based system has a common enemy, and he's run this flipper right now at the table. So that may or may not have helped. I will tell you that my staff has exhausted every effort that I'm aware of to participate at every level of this fire rescue service while supporting the volunteer system. And I am out of bullets as to what to do next. I'm not sure if they're aware of the communication that took place last week, Scott. I know you are. I will tell you, that's as fired up as I've been lately. And we could certainly talk about that at leisure. It's just not fair. If there were reasonable conversations occurring, there just hasn't been in 5.5 years. First, Kristen as a council member. Secondly, Emily, when she was a council member, tried to participate in ESAC. The common ask was, give us a citizen rep, give us a political rep, and give this fire department a vote in the governance models of the fire rescue system. And to date, 5.5 years later, our net score is 0. It's just going to require action, and we have to do something, whatever something is, to move it off center. From my chair and what I see, and I'm not aware of conversations at Kircher level, I shouldn't be, the county's going dark. They're not talking. I think Madam Mayor's got it right, is we signed collectively, under Scott's leadership, a document in November. The 4 public safety directors, county administrator acting, city administrator present, requesting to fix this fair level funding thing. And I have not heard an answer to that, even though I've asked a couple times. I assume you have not. I'm at the end of my rope, and it's not fair. I don't know another adjective to describe it. It's just not fair. And the people that are paying that freight are the taxpayers of the city of Hagerstown, and they have been since World War II.
Wow.
So I think the only solution left at this point is to get it on an agenda and explain to the citizens exactly what their tax dollars are and are not paying for. And the requests that we have made that have been left silent. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all constituents of the county, and to flat out not meet with another elected body, to me, is unacceptable. It's just unacceptable.
You know, it's, and we will do that in April, when we come forth with our budget. You know, I just want to, you know, my appreciation to Steve Lohr, who's really taught me a lot about fire operations, you know, Adam, Mark, Gump, you know, those guys, they're class acts. And I know that you all have experienced the frustration, especially Councilman Alshire, Mayor Keller. We've experienced frustration, and you know, it's just going to get to the point where, you know, what ultimately is the big picture here, and that's protecting the citizens of Hagerstown and Washington County.
Absolutely.
And to do it in a fair and equitable manner. And we intend to pursue that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that to put it in perspective, because I think that people hear us talk about it and they hear us, oh, that's a government issue between governmental bodies. And I don't really think that folks then sort of equate it down to their sort of individual level. And I don't think we've done that well enough, or at least explicitly enough. But the fact is, the city taxpayer just can't keep paying 30% of its city property tax. So roughly $1,200 is the average tax. That means about $400, right? So you can't keep paying 30% of your city property tax to this one service that you know that you need, that you want, and then at the same time receive the lowest per capita funding from the county of any other town, any other community across the county. I think it's like $447. I mean, it's a staggering differential when you take into account other communities. And then at the same time, literally, use that same 30% of your taxes to those city-paid fire services to subsidize the aging, frankly, county response capability, while removing those protections that you're paying for from your own city assets. And then at the same time, being told by the county that you have to pay a higher per capita rate for that lesser county service than any other fellow county resident in the county, while frankly a lot of those individuals that you pay for that professional service in this community are really producing the ability for a number of the volunteer stations to remain adequately staffed and not recognize that you're running those individuals sort of thin at the end of the day, you know what I mean, by fulfilling the needs of those 27 stations with a good bit of manpower that's coming from that paid service side. It will never work, and I say it, over and over, and I know in good conscience, there are many people much better than me that can't do this, but there's no way as a city taxpayer I continue to feel okay that I pay and know all of these things happen to me as a city taxpayer, and then I watch as my tax-supported service leaves the jurisdiction in which I'm paying for it to be in and not get any fair reciprocation for doing that. It won't make sense to me until you just say, we just can't do that. We do that with absolutely no other service that we have without some reciprocation for doing so. And I know that the argument's out there, well, the city's doing this because it's one of their services. That isn't our responsibility. The state has clearly said which entity is responsible, which governmental jurisdiction is responsible for that. We're one of only a very few, or one of 4 of 157 municipalities left in the state that even do this, and we're the only one of the 4 that do not receive some reciprocation from the county government recognizing that we are doing this. It just can't work that way. It doesn't work for those others that are still doing it, and it just shouldn't work for us.
And just so that people understand basically what, Kristen speaks sometimes and confuses me, today's a prime example.
That's what I was gonna say.
The
yeah.
fire out at Black Rock. The first responding unit is from Funkstown, correct? I mean, it's their jurisdiction.
It is.
And they did send an engine, correct?
Driver only.
They did. It was driver-only response.
Right.
How many pieces of equipment do we have out there?
I'd have to defer to Chief Hopkins. I was
Adam,
covering the
how
rest
many?
of the city, but we had 3 engines, a ladder, the chief and his aide.
Right. Now, that's outside of our jurisdiction, and we are not the first responder for that area. But yet, our chief was the one who was command of the scene.
Now, that's not unusual, and I certainly would never attempt to correct Councilmember Alshire here, but we do get reciprocal services. Just like Linganore Avenue, the number of volunteer companies that was needed to assemble the personnel necessary to handle that incident. That happens every day. What I will tell you is that that system of support outside of the municipal boundary is stressed. I've been doing this in one place or another here for 50 years last month. I've never seen it distressed this close to collapse. And I mean that with all the respect I can muster for the volunteer companies that are trying everything they can do to deliver services. But it's not working, and it can't work. And certainly what we're doing can't continue. It just, somehow we have got to build that system out. I have yet to see a written plan for whatever the county is doing for hiring, et cetera, even though that's supposed to happen in 2 weeks. It's changed multiple times, but in every explanation of that I've heard is they are relying fully on city assets to build out that regional plan. And if it's mayor and council's direction that that's no longer acceptable, then I have a responsibility to elevate that.
And I think citizens should understand clearly, in those incidents of reciprocating service, it should be made very apparent that our volunteer stations, meaning the volunteer stations that happen to be in the city, share in that reciprocating responsibility. The paid side that the city taxpayer pays for shares no responsibility to leave the jurisdiction in which those jurisdictional people are paying for it to be.
Morally, we do.
That's a very, black and white view.
It is.
I think that, honestly, if you are firefighter whoever assigned to engine company 4 today in the city of Hagerstown, you just know your job is to go to fires, put out
I get
fires,
it. I appreciate
help the
that.
citizens, and they don't judge who's paying the bills, who's not paying the bills, whatever. And in reciprocation, and it's why we fought so hard for the auto aid agreement, is that should be no political jurisdictions. We're not quite there yet. We are sending the closest resources most of the time. I'm very proud of that. That wasn't the case when I got here. I can't think of it in any other way as a chief of the fire department. I think of John Q. Citizen, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, that whoever they are, wherever they are, I don't care if they're in the 1500 block of dual highway or the 1700 block of dual highway. If they need help, we send the closest resource. I don't care what color the fire truck is, what the name is on the side of it. We want trained, certified practitioners, and I don't really care if they're career volunteer.
And I would have no issue with that, just at minimum, if our volunteer company's got the same exact funding as every other volunteer company that happens to be outside of the city jurisdiction across the county.
We've proposed that. I've personally
even
been
get
in at least 2 meetings, and I think actually 3, maybe 4, through 4 different county administrators now, where either Valerie or Scott have made that offer.
Yeah.
Thank you all again for your support. And
Thank you, Chief.
We're here to do whatever.
Thank you.
We won't stop. I mean, we continue, the chief and I talk almost daily on ways that we can help bridge this. And I think you'll hear in the coming weeks some pretty innovative things that we're looking at and ways that we're going to accomplish it, so.
And thanks for this open discussion. I think that it's really important for us to bring this back to, light and get things moving again with the conversation with the county. I'm convinced that everyone that is a citizen of Hagerstown thinks that the county and the city are working together and trying to make things better for everybody, right? But it's just this stalemate on the other side, and it's very disappointing. So thank you for this open conversation to really get this started again. So, and for all you do, all of you.
That's good?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. City Administrator.
Just one thing, we will get the lobby back open 5 days a week, starting Monday, 8 to 4. Also, again, I'll do this every week, just to remind that we will get back into service interruptions on April 1st. And if anyone is experiencing any issues with paying, or needs to get into payment arrangements or contact an agency, please contact our customer service group and let us provide you that information. They are extremely busy downstairs. The call volume has increased, as it does every year about this time of year, but a little bit more urgency this year, because we have not been able to really do any type of service interruptions in almost 2 years. And it's gonna be a challenge, and we just ask folks, please, let us try to help you, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to cut service, we're here to help you keep your service. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Kristen?
Anything?
Just to play off what Scott said, and I implore those individuals who are gonna receive your third stimulus check, try to, if you're in arrears to City Light or City Water, please reach out and try to work something out. I'm gonna tell you, I get phone calls all the time about, someone had their power turned off or the water turned off, and it breaks my heart. And I usually make a phone call and try to help, and then I come to find out that, this isn't the first time it's happened, and so I'm just going to plead one more time, if you get the opportunity and you have these funds become available, reach out and, make arrangements to get right with the city so that you don't have to be the one making that phone call. Thanks.
I have a comment. I wrote it down. So I'll ramble. But it has officially been a year since COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our lives. So I first want to send my condolences to those that have lost their loved ones, and also my sympathy to the businesses that had to close or for those that livelihood was just turned upside down. But now there's finally a light at the tunnel, so please continue to have hope. Please continue to support your community, and please continue to lend a helping hand to your fellow neighbor as we push forward through better days. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
All right, I just have 3 things. One, I got just 3, they're short. I got a very complimentary text of Donnie Harcum in our PCAD department today. He helped a friend of mine with an issue, and it involved ducks, and he apparently didn't treat her like she was crazy, and she was very complimentary, so I just wanted to give him a shout out. Also, North Hagerstown High School graduate Aaron Brooks, our wrestling phenom that is now at Penn State, just won his 2nd Big Ten championships. So just wanted to say, go Aaron, and
He's ranked number 1 now, right?
he is number 1, yes. So Hagerstown proud there. He's just phenomenal to watch. And lastly, it is our police chief, Joey Kiefer's birthday, so happy birthday, Chief. And you're lucky you're not here, because I was going to have everyone sing to you. If you guys talk to Joey today, wish him a happy birthday.
So that's why I didn't show up.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
With that, we're adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to Council Wrap. I'm fortunate to be joined this evening by Fire Chief Steve Lohr and backed up by a couple of his chiefs in Hopkins and Kleck. And wanted to talk a little bit, Chief. The conversation certainly got a little more in depth and sort of really bridged out from the strategic plan update, which you were here to present at the end of the meeting. So I wanted to get back to that first and foremost, because obviously that's very important in terms of setting out what Hagerstown Fire Department is going to do. We talked a little bit about what was achieved in a very trying year, and we continue to attempt to navigate through all of that. But when we go back to that 5-year strategic plan update and where we stand right now, one of the things that I noticed was, and I think that this has become, to me, something that needs some sort of differentiation. And I think when you look at it, you can certainly figure it out, but I want you to weigh in on it a little bit. And one of the things in there is preventing the 911 call, which I think most people probably know what that means. But on the other side of that, in light of what has happened recently with a big fire in the city, it's key to make a 911 call and to do it in a very timely fashion. So can you talk about the difference between those two things and what they mean and the importance of executing on both of those?
Absolutely. So here in Hagerstown, Washington County, we have one of the best models for community risk reduction, CRR, or preventing the 911 call I've ever seen, and that is Children's Village. We fully support that with staff every year to teach 100% of the city's second graders. We also use our staff to fill in when county school or county companies can't fulfill that kind of at the last minute. But think of the power, Wes, in every single second grader being taught fire safety, pedestrian safety, how to comply with the laws of operating a bicycle, all these other things that over decades has gotten people in trouble. Regrettably, some people still don't get that message. So in our recent multiple fatal fire, the evidence is pretty clear. There was a significant delay in notifying the fire department. I don't know a fire department on planet Earth that can do anything to help somebody during an emergency if they don't know about the emergency. So I'm pleading with our public that, and listen, these are really, really difficult situations, right? When you are in that kind of emergency and you haven't prepared yourself mentally for what you should do, I'm here to tell you is get away from that fire, get others away from that fire, and as soon as you possibly can, get to an area of safety, call 911. We have to know about it to get there and render assistance. If you're living in the city of Hagerstown, you know, our average response time, once we know about a fire, is less than 4 minutes. That's pretty good.
Yeah, you would think that that would be good enough to prevent a lot of what we've seen recently, as you said, really unprecedented here over the course of the last month in terms of fatalities related
Yes.
to fires in the city. And one of the things that was talked about in the meeting was the lack of, I guess, working together between the city and the county. Now, not necessarily, I guess, fire entities and rescue services when you're out there on the job. From what I gather, that still works pretty well. But in terms of laying the foundation for that and just the discussions that need to be had, I mean, why is that beyond important? Why is that imperative?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I can offer an opinion about that. It's imperative because we can't live without the rest of the system. They cannot live without us. And it's just that simple. So whether you call it economy of scale, whether you call it working together, you know, so the formation of the county career element does not have a fire prevention or a community risk reduction formal section. You know, they were created and designed to supplement volunteer staffing in the various companies out in the county. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. But it is also left to those individual companies to decide how they're going to deliver preventive 911 call services. They as well participate in Children's Village, but you know, we are frequently at planned events. We sponsor an ad on the backdrops of the Chamber of Commerce. We speak frequently at civic clubs and any place else we can go, schools. We're out there in the community trying to bring these issues to attention. So given the urban environment here, given the fact that there's over 40,000 residents, I think we do very well there. And that credit goes back to several chiefs ago, Chief Hallbaker, Gary Hallbaker, who created the first attempt to do that with smoke detectors. That program still lives today in the Hagerstown Fire Department. I don't know of a lot of fire departments that provide through partner agencies smoke detectors if you need them. In fact, our goal was not to let anybody sleep without one in a single-family dwelling. And number two, go out and install them and make sure they're in the right place and they work. So that when you have a fire, that smoke detector is your first alert to get out.
And there's no question that your guys have been extremely visible in the community, not just visible, as I said, but also doing the things that you mentioned, really making a difference, educating, you know, keeping things at the forefront of people's minds as best they possibly can. But just how difficult has that been over the course of the last year with not being able to do it the way that you would normally do those
Well,
things?
so with COVID, it slowed us down, but it hasn't stopped us, is what I would say, Wes. You know, we had to respect social distancing parameters. We have to respect these mask parameters, and we have. And we had a selfish reason for doing that is to preserve our workforce. We actually developed a plan to collapse a 3-shift fire department into 2 shifts if we lost enough people to COVID quarantines, et cetera, et cetera. Happily, as we sit here today, we did not have to enact that plan, but it's camera ready. If we have to, we will. Certainly after this very tragic event in our West End, I made a conscious decision. We're going to do the after the fire up there. We visited over 50 homes. We installed 18 smoke detectors that day, and I think this is equally important. We interacted with the citizens that were most impacted by that fire and their neighbors about what to do the next time to stop it from happening. And I don't think you can put a price on that, and I don't know that we'll ever know if it was successful.
Yeah, well, you almost don't want to find out.
That's
You just
right.
hope that that valuable information is ingested, they understand that, and they have that knowledge should they ever need it, but hopefully they won't. I want to go to something that was discussed last week, and that is the Insurance Services Office rating for the city of Hagerstown, because I wanted to get you to explain that a little bit in terms of what that means to a city taxpayer. I know it has a lot to do with insurance premiums based on the rating. So could you just kind of give like a layman's explanation of what that means?
Well, so the Insurance Services Office acts as a big contractor for insurance companies who choose to use that rating. It's called a Public Protection Classification Rating. 1's the best, 10's the worst. And through each one of those 10 steps, as you approach 1 for a public protection classification, insurance companies have the opportunity, based on this evaluation by a third party, to lower your insurance premiums based on the risk of having a serious fire, et cetera, et cetera. So Hagerstown, last time out in 2015, was a Class 3. That's only 2 other steps to get to the best you can be. I'm not aware of any department in Washington County that is lower than a Class 5. Now, there's lots of reasons for that. You're evaluated primarily in 4 areas: fire department, water system and supply, communications, and finally, community risk reduction. So we attempt to hit all 4 of those. Our goal this time, as we said last week, is to move the city of Hagerstown from a 3 to a 2. So if you are the owner of a commercial property, large commercial property that's unsprinklered, we believe that could have a up to a $3,500 a year impact in a positive way on your rating. And it's a way that by investing in public safety, by investing in all these things we just talked about, that the citizens directly benefit from that. Now, that also is an opportunity if you own a single-family dwelling or whatever. It certainly won't be $3,500. I don't know of anybody that pays that much money for fire insurance. I hope they don't.
Yeah, let's hope not.
But let's just put that in scale. They're going to get some extra discount as long as their insurance company participates in that, that reflects that public protection classification rating.
Yeah, and it certainly shows taxpayers that their money is being well spent, that you are striving to get better, to provide them with even better services, and certainly would be reflected ostensibly in that insurance cost. So that's a huge boon there. Something I wanted to ask you about that I was sort of unaware of until I looked at the presentation for the meeting today, and that is, and I hear you say it all the time, HFD. How strange will it be to say HFR?
Well, to me, not at all. I come from a system that did both all the time. That shouldn't be a negative reflection on the primary EMS provider here in the city, which is Community Rescue Service. Been around since 1955, does a tremendous job delivering EMS services. I think our point in this plan tonight was that we have charter language that was drafted probably nearly a century ago, when horses still pulled fire trucks. So when I consider the mission change, we call it the all hazards mission. You know, it used to be the only thing the fire department did was go to fires. That was it. Now, if people are in trouble for any reason, they call 911 and the fire department responds, and we are the responders of first choice. No better example of that than the after effects of 9/11 across the country, right? Wind, water, anything, the all hazards mission, confined space, rescue from heights, collapse rescue, in addition to fire EMS, all these other things. So we just believe that our charter should appropriately reflect the all hazards mission that is charged every fire department I know of in 2021, without, this isn't some subversive takeover of any of those things. It is acknowledging that we have a direct responsibility to participate in that, and therefore the city does too. So if any of those elements collapse in the future or don't fully meet the city's expectations, they have a right to choose what else they might do about it.
Hagerstown Fire Rescue. What one message would you want to leave everyone with here as we conclude today? I know there are a lot of different directions you could go. We could talk about a number of different things here, but what's one message that you would leave everyone with?
I get back to my first day on the job as a firefighter, as a career firefighter, and an old guy that was just at the top of his game. And he told me that very first day, he said, this is how it works. They call, we haul, that's all. And I've never forgotten that.
Pretty succinct.
It is very succinct, and every time I would get frustrated with something or the other, I'd get back to that guy's plain view of what we do.
Yeah.
And it holds true 40 years later.
Well, you go back to the basics because as we've found out, and I know you've sort of said, you've been at your wit's end here with a lot of things, but you control what you can control. And,
Yep.
and right there is doing the job that you're in a position to do. So it comes down to being that simple despite everything else that goes on around it.
And I hope the citizens here realize that, starting with the two guys behind me and about 75 other folks, they are committed every day to delivering the best services they can with the resources we're provided. And we're constantly focused on continual improvement. That's what we want to do. We want to be better tomorrow than we were today. And I'm proud to say Hagerstown Fire Department measures up to that.
And I truly have felt every time that I've talked to you, from the first time that I talked to you to talking to you today, that you are one of those leaders who never looks for the spotlight to be shown on you at all, because you realize that you're only as good as those who surround you and don't necessarily work for you, but work with you and work collectively for the city itself.
What I would say is our business is a team sport, Wes. So it wouldn't matter if I was the best or the worst leader in the world. If we don't have that team rowing the boat in the same direction, we're going to fail. And we have a good team here, and they're rowing the boat sometimes upstream, sometimes downstream. But we get it done.
Yeah, there are definitely ebbs and flows out there, but you guys normally come out on the right side of it. Chief, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for sticking around, guys. Certainly appreciate it, and appreciate everything that you do for the city of Hagerstown.
Thank you.
That's it for Council Wrap today. We'll see you back in a couple of weeks, a regular session next week, no meeting the week after that, so we'll be back the first Tuesday in the month of April. Till then, Wes Decker saying so long from Council Chamber.